Welcome to the Forgotten ECE, the show where before and after school educators, summer camp and PD staff and CYWs have a place where they are seen, heard, and valued. I'm your host, Jamie Wegler, and I am so excited you're here. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Forgotten ECE. And do I have a treat for you today? I have a special guest who is all about human skills, which I think we can all agree is a necessity. Everyone, a warm welcome for Chris. Hello, Chris. How are you doing?
Hey there. Never heard of him. How are you?
Good.
It's good to
Thanks
see you,
for
Jamie.
being here. Why don't you tell the listeners who you are and what you're all about?
Man, you know what? I'll save you the long version. I'll just say that I feel like in a AI powered world, the things that we do that will be most valuable and most important, that we should double down on the most, will end up being the most human things. And so conversations like this and building trust with human beings and having a relationship that you can rely on are all these things that are going to be really hard for AI to replace. So I feel that is worth spending some time practicing because, like you said, skills are something that we can learn versus like what we think of as talent or intelligence, which we tend to think as like this gifted thing that we may or may not have control over. But yet here we are learning some skills. Look at us.
It's so true. And like AI it's basically taking over the world, but I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, but you can't deny.
Not yet. Just wait. You haven't spent enough time on YouTube.
Yeah. I haven't.
It'll happen. It happens to all of us. Yeah.
But it's so true. And one of the things, I mean, you can't take away human skills, but one of the other things that I would argue tooth and nail that you can't take away is this human interaction. And early childhood education is all about human interaction and relationships. So I think there is a severe lacking, and maybe that's a tough truth to swallow, but there's a severe lacking in certain human skills that when we lean onto AI to write proposals or emails and things for, that we're missing out on that human touch. How do you feel about educators using AI or planning programs around their children with AI?
You know what? It's a weird one because I'm so not anti-AI. I'm so not anti-tech. Like a large portion of my career has been in education technology because I think there's a ton of great stuff that can happen with it. But there's an insane number of caveats that include a long list of things like privacy. Who gets to own the thing? Who gets to own your data? Who gets to access your data when you tell it everything about yourself? Does it own your voice if you're talking to it? Like, how does that work? So there's a whole bunch of questions that are sort of still unanswered. And are being sorted literally right now. And so like many things in the world, technology has created this backlog of work where we say, hey, as governments, as organizations, like we need identity access management. Hey, we need privacy and security. We need all these, we develop policy. We need to develop opinions about these things. Educators using tools like AI for, lesson planning or writing like proposals, like I'm so all about that. I think the one thing that like mistake that people make is they'll use it like they'll use Google search. Like they'll be like, find me this or write me that. And then they'll take the answer and then they'll either say, oh, that was good. Or they'll say, oh, that's not so good. And then they kind of stop, right? And like AI as a tool is built for lots of rapid iteration and for you to help coach it. And so if you're using AI in a way that's more like a thought partner where you're saying, hey, help me think through this proposal. Here are the goals. Here are my objectives. Here's what I want to merge together. Help me synthesize this. It's going to have a better response. And if you end up working with it a little bit longer and coaching it through kind of like what you're going to do, one of the, I think other kind of like rabbit holes that we go down is you'll be like, hey, write this proposal, and then it'll write something. And then we don't necessarily nitpick. We don't coach it on why this was good or why that was bad. We just take it and we kind of just go with it. Or we'll take this presentation that has 400 slides in it, and like we won't decide, we won't use our human judgment to decide what needs to be a slide and what doesn't need to be a slide. And so there's this human feedback loop that needs to be kind of part of it. I think the best perspective on this is, I think the language now is co-intelligence. This is a book written by a guy named Ethan Mollock. His blog is really, really great. He's one of my favorite thinkers on AI. And he wrote a book, and the new book is coming out very soon. We're recording this in July 2026. His new book is coming out like in a month or two, something like that, maybe in the fall. So that's really exciting. But his last book was called Co-Intelligence. And basically the thesis of this book is that there's a lot of stuff that humans can do really, really great. And then there's a lot of stuff that AI can do that's really, really great. Then there's a third category of stuff that neither of us could do alone. But since we get to do it together, we can do this whole new amount of work. And like, to me, that's like a healthy, like productive viewpoint, I think, in a world where it feels like the Wild West.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. There's so many things you said there. I agree.
I know. I sort of blabbed there for a minute. I don't know how that happened.
This is what our whole conversation is going to be like. So listeners, so sorry.
So sorry.
I'm very much similar. But no, I love AI, and I think there is definitely a place for it. I recently opened a summer camp, and it helped pick the themes of the summer camp. I said what my values are as a person and what I want the kids to walk away with. And then in those themes, finding out activities that are great for the children. It's not like it's the one that's doing the activities. It's help planning with that. It's really like Pinterest on acid. It's like, here's all of these things, and you can pick what's best for the people that you are working with. But I think that everything gets a bad rep right away, and then there's people that are for it and there's people that are against it, and they spend so much time battling about why it's good and why it's bad that no one really sees it as a sort of assistance, rather than no one's putting in information and saying, here, teach the children AI. They're saying, here, can you help me better get my point across in these lessons?
Yeah, I'm so with you. I'm sort of starting to lose patience for conversations that are like, it's all good or it's all bad. Like in kind of any realm, but like if we're just talking about AI, it's kind of both. Like, we have to sort of acknowledge that there's a huge environmental cost. We have to acknowledge that there's huge security risk. We have to acknowledge, like, depending on how you set it up, those things can be mitigated or not. Like, and there's different, ways you can implement it. And so like, there's all this context and color around the issue. And it's just that it's just one of these things where it's too easy. Especially if you spend a little too much time on YouTube, it's too easy to be like, oh, this is good, or oh, this is bad. Because like a lot of, convoluted, nuanced, important things in our human lives, there's a gray area. And I'm sorry that it's not clean cut, but like, it's sort of like, if you're like, oh, I'm anti-pollution, and you're like, well, unfortunately, you kind of need to drive a car to like participate in society. And that's fine if you don't want to do that. Like, you're allowed to do whatever you want. But it's just one of those things where like, there are some sort of consequences that we have to accept as part of the thing. And I'm not saying that that's good or bad, or we should like try to make it as great as possible. Like, I'm just saying there's trade-offs right now. And so we're all negotiating that. And, it's complicated and it's nuanced.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there's so much that goes into it. But again, it's using your common sense. So if you're looking and streaming on AI saying things like, is my milk bad? Or should I buy eggs today? Well, obviously then you're misusing it and you're wasting the electricity and all the power that runs it. But if you're actually using it to a way that is benefiting you or society or what that looks like, it becomes whether or not it's a good trade-off or not. Now, again, I don't know, but I don't think there's much wrong with it in that sense, as long as you're not using it stupidly. Use some human skill. Okay.
Yeah, right. I have a question for you, Jamie, which is like, what is a way that you think educators or directors or like people in ECE should be thinking about AI but haven't yet?
Oh, great question. I am a firm believer, and there's a place for technology in the classroom. Yeah. I don't think kids should be playing video games all the time. I don't think they should just be willy-nilly on the internet. But technology is not going anywhere. And part of that technology is AI. So are we fundamentally giving them the skills they need to navigate AI when it comes down to it? Because there's no
Right.
blocks on cell phones to stop children from downloading ChatGPT or anything. They can have access to it. You don't even have to download. You can just go to Google and use Gemini or Microsoft or whatever it is. So I think it's showing them internet safety, and it's arming them with the tools that they need to be able to navigate what's right and wrong and what's not okay and what's real and fake. And I think as directors and as educators, it also comes down to policies that we're putting into place with it. So it's not going anywhere. We have to learn to live with it, but we also have to make sure people are safe, I think. But again, like when you're coming down, I'm also a huge believer in emergent curriculum. So play-based, taking from the children's interest. And while we are all creative beings, sometimes you're just tired and exhausted and you have no idea what other ways that we can bring this learning a step further, and use AI for it. Hey, you know what? The kids are super interested in building ramps and we've tried X, Y, and Z. Where else can I take this so it's further and I can foster that imagination a little bit more? And it does. And then you can try new things and it takes some of the guesswork out of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so with you. There's like a bunch of things that you said that I feel like are really important. And a lot of it comes back to this idea of like human judgment, right? Like, cool, it's great to generate a bunch of ideas. And sometimes the ideas that you generate may not be good ones, but they may spark the next one that is good that you had. And so there's a participation and like a thought partnering that I think is like essential in what you were describing in the best case use of the tools. If you go on Amazon right now, you will find an impossible amount of AI companions marketed at kids ages 3 years old. 3 years old. And they're coming from China and there's no regulation on that. And like, where's the recording going? And like, who owns that data? And like, there's a whole world of questioning around like, what does that mean? And kids don't necessarily, like the act of participating, the act of having a conversation with an AI companion, it's designed around language. And so language is really convincing and it feels like a real conversation. And our job is to remember that it's a computer and we're humans and that relationships belong between humans and humans. And you can have a computer relationship. I mean, that's already a thing that's happened. I think the first person to marry their AI already happened. Like you could go look that up.
And it was in Canada. It was insane.
Oh my gosh. Was she your neighbor?
No, thank God.
Okay.
No, but it was on like My Strange Addictions or something, and I almost died. I was like, why is this in Canada?
Right. Like we're already there. Like it's already like happening in this way. And so I feel really strongly that our job is not to like ban or limit. We have to use the tools in the smart, responsible way. And I think for a lot of early childhood educators, it's coming down to relationships. It's coming down to trust. It's coming down to conversation. It's coming down to like, what is the fabric of collaboration on your team? How does your team communicate? All of those things are really important because guess what? A huge portion of adolescents who are being studied using AI right now are saying that they would prefer to talk to their AI companion over their actual partner. And like, why is that? Like, does it have to do with their ability to listen, your ability to ask good questions and follow-up questions or respond without judgment? Like those are the human components that I feel like are missing that we need to develop. And it obviously that goes for like romantic relationships, but specifically right now, I'm thinking of like team dynamics. What is the cultural DNA of your organization? And like, how easy is it for people to share their ideas without being shot down? Or like those kinds of things that we think of as like intangible soft skills. But like, I don't know, if you want something to like actually take hold in your organization, pro tip, don't call it a soft skill. Like if you want to develop, if you want to train on it, if you want it to be a priority, don't call it a soft skill.
It's so true. And this podcast is all about before and after school and summer camp and recreations. So these children are older. They're 6 to 12. So if our 3-year-olds are already being introduced to these AI companions, Imagine what our 6-year-olds already know about them and what they're searching up. And then you get to the 12-year-olds and oh my God, it's a whole world that you don't even want to know. So bringing it in and telling them and saying like things like, no, it's banned. Like we don't talk about that here. It's not safe, is just going to make them want to do it more. Okay. It's like putting a big red button in front of people and saying, don't touch it. We know people are going to touch it. Okay. Right. So how can they do that safely? How can they learn to explore it properly? But yeah, going on the soft skills, you're 100% right. These aren't soft skills. We need these skills to survive. I was just in a training the other day and I was talking about being able to take constructive criticism and starting your staff meetings off at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the summer, talking to each other about how you handle criticism and in what forms you like to be told it, because some people like it straight up and other people are like, no, you need to sandwich it into, you know what, you're really pretty, but you need to, you know what I mean?
You're really pretty. Bro,
you're
so good.
You're super smart, but maybe you should do this transition differently. But like,
you should just start every conversation with "you're really pretty."
It's not that far from me.
It's so good, dude.
You're really pretty, but no, like we lose all of these skills. In the day-to-day. And I'm not saying that that's AI's fault. I don't think it is. I think we just stopped practicing talking to each other. We started just assuming that everyone wants to be nice to each other and that we're going to hurt each other's feelings, so that anyone who tries to criticize or constructively criticize the other person, all of a sudden they're not being nice and we can't handle it. And then all this conflict comes up in the workplace. And summer staff, especially, they're only together for 2 months. That's 2 months that you have to build this insane trust with each other and run these programs, and then you go on your merry way, and whether or not you work with them again, who knows? So it's so hard to, well, what do you suggest? How can people build these skills in such a small time? Because they're not soft. They're extremely, extremely important.
So what's great about them is that because they're skills, we get to practice them. What's difficult is a lot of the groundwork or frameworks that have been laid out for a lot of these types of like conversations and engagements. For example, you just mentioned what we know as the feedback sandwich, where you give someone good feedback and then you give them critical feedback and then you give them good feedback again. This is a documented thing that people use. I'm sorry to everyone who uses this effectively. I don't like it because in my experience, what usually happens is if you try to use that approach, people know that that's what you're doing and it feels inauthentic and it feels disingenuous and they feel like you can't actually have a real conversation with them and that you need this weird fluffy way to get the point across. And what people actually want is for someone to be straight with them and tell them the truth. And a lot of the time we don't always like hearing the truth, but if you ask anybody, any human being, and you say, would you rather your friends tell you the truth or would you rather that your friends were just like nice to you and polite to you about stuff? 99% of human beings will say, I'd rather them tell me the truth. Yet, here we are, coming up with frameworks, figuring out a way to like get around and bend it into a way that's like sugar makes the medicine go down, right? There's a ton of frameworks like this. It's not just the sandwich method. There's a zillion. My point, I think, here is like the effective way to do this is you need to deliver the feedback, but you also need to deliver it in a way that will be motivating and helpful. And so the idea of like, you're not doing this right, that's crappy feedback. Like, right? What might be better feedback is like, hey, can I give you some helpful pointers on this thing? So one, ask permission, right? And now you've got a little bit more buy-in. Is it okay if I give you some critical feedback on this? Great. Now you're on the same page and you're aligned with what's about to come next. And they're going to be a little bit more open to hearing what's the next thing out of your mouth. The next thing out of your mouth is the feedback where you say, when you do this, this is the outcome. But in our organization, our value is this: integrity, it's respect, it's time management, it's whatever. In order to do that, the way we do that on our team is we do ABC. And so you give here's what's happening, here's the outcome. Then you provide, here's what we do and how I want you to think about life on this team. And what you have just done is you have just shared with them that this is not something that they're going to be fired for. You have just included them in the cultural DNA and the participation of being part of this culture. You have included them on your team. You say, when we do this, we do that. Right. And like they are now part of that experience. You're not saying if you don't, then you're fired. That's not productive, right? Like that's not helpful. That's going to make people look over their shoulder, be suspicious, and have all kinds of weird, undesirable, negative emotions, right? That will get in the way of high performance. But if we're talking about high performance teams in a positive culture, it's going to look a little bit more like that kind of feedback where it's direct and then instructive of like, climb the ladder by putting your foot here, then your hand here, then your foot here, then your hand here. And you give them very specific feedback and then you let them execute. How else does that make sense? How else can I be helpful to you? Right? Like then you're following up in the last phase of that with like a direction, right? Like I want to support you. So I know you can do that. I've seen you in this situation and I know that that's part of who you are. And I know you're going to be great at this. How else can I support you in that? Right. And you're telling them that you know that it might take a minute for them to practice, but you're telling them that you're going to have their back. You're going to do it for them, but you're going to be there if they fall. And like, to me, that kind of level of feedback is way more productive than this sandwich thing, which is like contrived and like not really productive. You know what I mean?
Honestly, AI invented it. No, I'm just kidding. This is why people walk around telling people they're really pretty and it doesn't go anywhere.
Right. And I get it, man. Like we have to regulate our own emotion, right? Like we have to regulate our own experience because for a lot of us, it feels really uncomfortable to give direct feedback. And like, guess what? I'm so sorry, but like you're going to have to learn to do it. And like, honestly, there are tools, there's frameworks, there's sentences, fill in the blank. Because we need to do blank. Like, you know, there's all kinds of stuff out there for you that's helpful and will help you get through that moment. I do this all the time. I do it all the time. If I'm like, this isn't going great, but I have to like sit and process it. I have to really understand what is the problem. Am I just frustrated with this part of it? Or is it really this, that, well, it's the outcome. And if it's really the outcome, then I really need to understand their process for doing this, because if I understand their process, then I can coach them to the outcome. Like I have to sit with it and figure out what is the true problem. And that will get me to the sentence that I need to deliver. And believe me, there have been plenty of times in my career where I have had to write the sentence down in an Apple notepad and put it in my screen or on my phone or whatever. And in 30 seconds before I go into that meeting, I have to read the sentence 8 times, or I have it on my screen so that I'm watching someone's face. And then I say, I have to deliver this in this exact way. Please bear with me for 2 seconds while I read this thought that I generated for you. Like I've done that. There is nothing wrong with that. I think that's like a strength. Like I think people see that and respect that you are trying to help in the best possible way. What people don't like is laissez-faire, unthoughtful, you know, casual, free. Yeah. Right. And like, so the idea that you put intention and thought into this is helpful. That's going to be a positive. And even if it doesn't go great, they can at least respect you. And that's all we can ask.
Absolutely. And in the end of the day, we're also modeling this. Like if we're talking about our teams in childcare, we're modeling this for the children so they're going to learn. It's better than putting sticky notes everywhere and saying, you've forgot this, or do this, or you didn't do this right. Or talking to people and saying, so I noticed you didn't sign out so-and-so last night. Don't let it happen again. No, like people need to know exactly what you want and exactly why this is an issue or whatever the conflict is happening. It's true. Like the number one reason that conflict happens is because people don't communicate, because they take the long way around, or they just avoid it altogether and they let it fester. And then what does that solve? Literally nothing.
Yeah, I love that you said that in the language that you said it, because one of the main like lessons that I love to drive home in my workshops and like trainings with educators and directors is this idea. And this was like one of these things that was given to me. Like I didn't invent this idea. I had a mentor who shared this with me because he had to give me feedback. I built this huge HR hiring sequence for his like company. We were like, cool. I've hired people before. I've been on high performance teams. I'm going to build this whole thing for him. And I built all the hoops. I built all the interviews. I built all the checklists. Like, cool, here it is. And I handed it to him and I was like, take a look at this. This is going to be great for our team. Like, look at all these hoops and qualifiers and disqualifiers and things we built into this. And he looks at me and he's like, this is really thoughtful. What it does is it helps us judge which decisions people made in their, projects. This interview process allows us to see into that. But what it doesn't do is it doesn't give us context around why they made those decisions. And so what I want you to do is I want you to go back through this, and I want you to be the detective, not the judge. And that hit me so hard. And that is now language that I use in workshops to help paint the picture of like who we need to be, what we need to do, and how it feels when we do it so that we know it's working. And that framework of like be, do, feel is like a core component in how I deliver lessons and ideas and messaging, because I think there's this weird thing that's happening in training and PD right now in early childhood. And I'm sure it's in a lot of other fields. But what I've observed is a lot of talking from slides and reading bullet points from PowerPoint slides directly. And a lot of people who flew across a country or a nation to be at a conference to then be read to from a presentation that's 90 minutes and could have been an email. And like that to me is infuriating, because we have the most important workforce in the world, the early childhood workforce. And you wouldn't put cheap gas in a Ferrari. So why are we giving training in this way that's not going to be transitioned into long-term memory? It's not going to be transitioned to action. It's not going to be transitioned to habit. It's just great. I may have 100 bullet points for you, and they may all be true and incredibly useful. But until that becomes part of an experience that you had, or until that bullet point connects to a real world moment or a person it reminds you of, or a deep memory that is ingrained in your operating religion, like there is no way that's going to get turned into action. We're going to nod our heads. We're going to be like, yeah, that's really great. That was a really useful training, rating it 9 out of 10 on the sheet. And so the director goes, well, that was useful. But in the real world, like we go back to the world we live in on Monday and nothing changes. And to me, this is like a cyclical nightmare, because it just feels like, oh my gosh, this group of people, so important, so essential for training the next generation of human beings, especially in this world where AI is like uncertain and there's no rules and like, we're just learning about how it works. And you could go on Amazon and buy an AI companion for a 3-year-old right now, and like there's no consequence or regulation around it. And like this is the audience that we're training with that kind of PD and training. And to me, that's like really upsetting. Anyhow, that was my long-winded way of getting to the framework of be, do, feel, why I think it's helpful to know who to be and what the goal is. It's helpful to know exactly specifically what to do, use this sentence, fill in these bullet points. And then it's also, part of the human experience to know, how does this feel day to day? What kind of discomfort is it going to be? And that is going to help us execute instead of running away from something difficult. So all of that to say, I feel like educators are the most important workforce in the world, and they deserve the best training. So that's why we do it. That's why we do human skills training.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're so true. You can't teach people passion. So you can tell the speakers that get up and they start speaking and they're like, okay, this is X, Y, and Z. And people get nervous and it is what it is. But the people that really get into it and tell the stories and this is my experience and this is why I'm still doing it and this is what's happening, those are the people that you just gravitate towards, and that they know what they're talking about. And it's just like reflective practice is huge. In all of my workshops, I do reflective practice at the end, and they have things that they take away with and they talk to each other, because we learn in so many different ways that it can't just be being talked at. But then the other thing you said that's going, hold on, I'll get there. Dang it.
AI companions. Be, do, feel. Detective or the judge.
Oh, the B2. Yeah.
Got you.
It's leading with curiosity. And I teach this to educators when they're dealing with children, and how I don't think children are inherently bad. I think that they all have behaviors that they're coming up with because there's things that they're trying to communicate they're not. But the same thing goes for people. People aren't inherently bad. Our co-educators and our co-teachers and our supervisors aren't inherently bad. And when we lead with curiosity and we lead with compassion, like, oh, what's going on? Like, I see this was hard today. Like, is everything going on at home okay? Or is everything, you're feeling okay? That's when we get to this other layer where it's like, okay, people aren't just making your life difficult. There's things that are going on, this invisible backpack that they're carrying that we don't see. And when we just write them off for whatever it may be, we're missing this whole perspective of compassion and just being kind to one another. If everyone was kind to one another, we would live in a completely different world. Okay.
So like, you remind me, there's this great moment in an episode of The Simpsons.
I love The Simpsons.
Where you do? Okay, it's going to work great, because you've probably seen this episode where Lisa Simpson, right? This positive, hardworking, optimistic, altruistic person is going door to door, and she's knocking on doors, and she's like, hey, I'm Lisa Simpson. I'm like your neighbor. And like, I did all the research, and if we all just turned our thermostats down to 68 degrees, we'd save, the planet in 10 years or whatever. And as soon as this guy like opens the door and he hears Lisa's little pitch, he goes, meh, and he slams the door in her face. Right. And it's this perfectly accurate moment of like, this hardworking, optimistic, true, person who wants to make the world better and is asking basically nothing. She's asking almost nothing for us to all just contribute just a little bit. And guess what? The reality is no one will know what you know. No one will believe what you believe. Like all that work of like trying to convince people and like trying to like that. This is like the perfect articulation, in my opinion, of like how the world actually works. And so I think this is like an area that we need to pay attention to in early childhood education, which is our own personal energy and how much energy we're putting out and what kind of energy we're putting out. And I feel really strongly that like we should have no energy for trying to convince people to do the Lisa Simpson approach. Like it seems like it's going to work, right? Because it's really clear, it's really small ask, blah, 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 blah. But like, no, what we need to do is align. Like we need alignment. Absolutely. We need incentives to align. Like it's only after the human brain feels that dopamine hit and that little bit of like positive internal reaction that the outside part of our brain, the prefrontal cortex, gets to say why we feel that way, right? It's like we say that, oh, you should take emotions out of it. You should just like, think logically. And it's like, I'm sorry, but there's only one way that information goes into the brain. And the first stop is the limbic system, which is where you process emotions. And so so we feel things first and then we think about why. And this is a huge complication, nuance, whatever you want to call it, but like it's also a reality that we need to interact with instead of what you were just saying, which is like working harder on something that's never going to work. And like our approach cannot be, well, you know what we should do? We should keep showing up. Remember our why. We should keep, right? How many times have you heard that in a conference? Like, oh yeah, we're so burnt out and demotivated. Like, just remember your why. Like, I'm sorry, it's not sustainable. I just feel like so strongly that like the incentive structures and alignments need to change. And like, we need to take human, behavior and processing into consideration. Yeah. Just like one of those areas where the training, the skill development, all of it needs to relate in the same way that the brain actually processes information. And so otherwise you're going to be left with 100 bullet points that are really true and really useful and never get implemented.
It's that buy-in. It's the initial buy-in. You have to get a buy-in before you can start preaching to the choir. I volunteer at my kids' school, and we're always trying to get volunteers for things, and yada yada yada. It never works. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm here to help, and then when it comes down to it, no one's ever here to help. Which people are busy. It's fine. We won't get into that. But the principal was really great and was like, well, what happens if we offered like an incentive, like everyone who volunteers on this day, they can enter a draw for $100 gift card. No, we can't do it. We can do that, but I mean, like we can't do this in EC all the time.
Right.
But when we're trying to get feedback and stuff, because guess what? That was the most volunteers we ever had volunteer. And the same goes for early childhood education or getting research or feedback or figuring things out. There has to be some sort of incentive first to get that dopamine release. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, now that I've reached you and I have your attention. That's why timeshares work. They're like, here's a fancy vacation, but also you have to sit through this 3-hour presentation.
Right. That's exactly right. 100%.
Amazing. So can I ask what made you start talking about this? Like what was your buy-in?
You know what? When I was in college, all I cared about was how do I make really small young brains turn into really great, amazing, happy, productive adult brains. And I was just obsessed with this idea of like, how does the structure work? How does it get built? Like what chemicals are involved? I was like under the hood of like, how does this literally work? I had this amazing opportunity when I graduated. So I thought I was going to be a neuroscientist, right? Like that was the path. And I had this really amazing opportunity to work in a lab, a pediatric neuroscience lab at Penn State. And I managed this lab for several years and got to work with just shockingly brilliant people. The kind of people where on day 2, I remember sitting in a meeting and being like, oh, wow, that's a really good question that they had just asked. Oh, wow, that was a really good response that was like fully thought through and like has all these angles that I didn't really consider. Oh, wow, that's a really cool pile-on idea that like, and like quickly you see the pinball go around the room, bing, bing, bing. And like, I realized, I had 2 choices. Like either I was going to open my mouth and blab and try to assert what I thought I could assert and like try to, contribute in whatever way I thought I could, or I was going to shut up and go full sponge mode and just absorb as much as I could. And like, thankfully I was able to keep my mouth closed because I learned so much from that team and those people. And like, what I quickly figured out was they do not need my help. They're adding so many more leaves to the tree of knowledge. I don't need to be here to help them with it. They're just fine. That part of the machine is going great. The problem is we know all this amazing stuff about the brain. We know all these cool things about how attention works, how attention is developed, how cognition is developed, how temperament turns into personality. We know all these cool things, but yet it's not getting into classrooms. And that was an unsettling, impossible, I can't not look at it thing for me. And so I just jumped ship and jumped into the private sector. And I was like, cool, ed tech. Like I managed a software company for a couple of years. How am I going to turn education and technology? There's this cool overlap and there's a lot of cool things that could happen with education and technology. How can I make this work for more people and more students? And then at some point I found myself running some of the largest Lego and Minecraft shows in the world for kids. And because in my mind, I was like, cool, why can't we use fun to educate kids? Like, why can't that be a part of it? At some point, found myself back into training. And so for several years was like working with an amazing training team that I learned so much about facilitation from working with middle schoolers and high schoolers and educators all over the country for several years on a lot of very similar I would consider human skills. They would just use different language for it, but just like a really, really amazing experience. And at some point I was like, guys, I have to go do this for early childhood. Like we're doing it for middle schoolers and high schoolers and like a lot of other educators who work with those students. But I was just like, this whole mission of mine from the beginning has been about how to take little brains and turn them into amazing bigger brains. And like, I have to go full circle. So the last couple of years, that's been the focus is like, how do I just deliver the highest quality training, PD workshops? And now I'm starting to get into the digital space where I'm like, okay, I need to have a core competency of like developing video. So if you go to my YouTube channel, it's like really not very good. I'm just figuring out how to do this in a way that's going to be entertaining and fun, but also like crazy memorable and crazy easy to turn into action. So I'm just figuring that part out now. But the training and the workshops have really been the focus, and that's the highest impact thing I can do. So anyhow, that's my long-winded story of like, hey, I'm out here to make something positive happen on this planet. And here's this long, windy road that I took to get here, but here I am.
No, that's awesome. And if people want to reach out to you, how do they find you?
I'm pretty easy to find if you just search Chris Danilo. Everything that I do is on chrisdanilo.com. All of the newest resources, videos, trainings, workshop stuff, all of that goes through my newsletter. So if you go to chrisdanilo.com/newsletter, all of it will be there. And fun fact, because we were just talking about this, if you're subscribed to the newsletter, every month I give away a book from the Human Skills Training reading list. And this has been a couple months now. And so free giveaways. You don't have to do anything if you're just on the list. you're enrolled already. You're just ready to go.
Speaking of dopamine building. All right.
That's what I'm talking about. Why is it not fun? I don't know. I had this moment. It was like a couple months ago where I was like, why am I not just giving stuff away? This is ridiculous. I can't believe I didn't think of that before. Like, why have I not just been giving stuff away? This is so fun. People were asking, what's that book you mentioned? Oh, what's that thing? And it just clicked. I was like, God, I am slow in the head. Like, they're telling me, and I'm like, yeah.
Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, this has been so much fun. Is there anything else that you want the listeners to know? Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to be like, this is it?
You know what? I think there's a huge amount of pressure on educators to be super high performance, super dialed in, give everything, empathy, compassion, feels. You have to be communicative. You have to be high energy. You have to be positive. Yeah, everything in 2026 is insane. Nothing makes sense. Anything can happen. And I just feel like the number one thing that educators are being told is like, hey, we have a lot of burnout in our field, so like you should be more resilient. Here's some resilience training. And that just put me right over the edge. And I was like, nah. I went full like punk rock on it. And I was like, no, we're not doing it. Like, this is not, it was like, hell no. Like, I'm like, we're going to do it differently. There's not going to be resilience training. I think recovery and taking that time and figuring out what are the 5 things that give you energy and focusing on those and thinking of it less in terms of, am I trying hard enough? And thinking of it more in terms of what is the list of things that gives me energy, what are the things that take away energy, and how do I balance those, and how do I add more to the list? I think to me, that is the main focus. We talked about AI and how we should be using AI. And I know we talked about all the education and the PD and the workshop, all the ways you should be engaging and the sentences you should be using. It's too much. Like, I don't think you should do any of that. I think you should probably just start with figuring out how to recover effectively. I think you should figure out like how to take breaks that are actually recovering and rejuvenating you. That to me is like probably the first stop.
Yes. And actually taking breaks. I know so many educators who they either feel bad or they're like, oh, I took 5 minutes. I don't need it. Like, let's just go back into it. And you're like, no, take a break.
I know.
Go for a walk. Breathe. Have self-care. That's not this spa day.
Right.
I slept in. Like, actually find something that recovers you. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. I think that's the main thing is taking care of yourself right now. So hopefully that's helpful. Amazing. Just don't scroll on your phone because that's a whole other conversation.
Well,
it's designed to
conspiracy theories.
Yeah, that ought to calm you right down. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Chris, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much. I'm sure you'll be back on this podcast again because you're so full of incredible knowledge. Folks listening, be sure to go check out Chris's website, join the newsletter for a free book, and I will see you, hear you, listen to it. Will you listen to me next week? Woo! Thank you so much. Bye.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thank you, amazing listeners, for your support. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at MissJamie_RECE. Give a star rating and leave a review. Have something you want to hear about in relation to before and after school programs or full day summer camp? DM me or comment. Again, thank you so much and happy learning.